Jack Smith famously prosecuted this president. He spoke out in his first journalistic interview, which was in demand by all the outlets, print, TV, and I mentioned it was big deal. Nicole got that, and I think a lot of our viewers have seen maybe parts of it, or if they watched the whole program that day last week. But I wanted to underscore what he said about, of course, the Jan 6 pardons, because he was very much leading the effort with Trump driven from office and seen at one point as unlikely to return. Even Republicans, McConnell was talking about how maybe they should convict him. And then to go into this upside-down landscape we have now, where the worst of the worst, the seditionists, have been pardoned. Take a look.
Talk about the pardons of these people convicted for the violence on January 6th, right? There's all sorts of costs. There's the obvious cost of just recidivism. These are people who committed their crimes in the name and in the interest of Donald Trump, and he's returned the favor, right, by pardoning them. That sends one message to them.
There's actually a lot about that interview I wanted to ask you about, but on that core point, he's saying when you reward this stuff, you will get more of it, meaning that it is a non-conspiracy theory, non-fringe concern that this could become a weaponized militia for future crime.
I think we are facing an attack on the rule of law that is different in kind and scope to anything I've seen in my lifetime.
Jack Smith speaking out exclusively to MS Now's Nicole Wallace. Andrew Weissman's back with us. You know his record well. You've spoken to him. As I mentioned, this was his sort of big television journalism interview, but you've also spoken with him in this era, so you have a keen sense of it. And I want to play, as promised, what he said about not being intimidated as well. Take a look.
Are you afraid to be speaking out?
No, not at all. I am not going to be intimidated. And there's no way in the world, if the thought was to go after me so that I wouldn't speak up about the corruption that's happening or speak up to defend these agents and prosecutors, that is a grave miscalculation. There is no way I'm going to be intimidated.
What does that mean for everyone who's got to find their own way to decide what to do in this country as we reflect on the best spirit of Independence Day?
So I think it's great that Jack is speaking out. I did interview him, but I've also known him for a while. We were colleagues in the U.S. Attorney's Office a lifetime ago in New York, in the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney's Office. And I think one of the great things about his speaking, not just in university settings, but with Nicole in a television setting, is that for so long, he was somebody who was known only through what Donald Trump and Donald Trump's acolytes were saying about him. And there wasn't the ability to get to know him as a person and to get a measure of the man. And so I think it's just so terrific that he is speaking. People make their own judgments about him. I do encourage people to listen to the entire interview. It was incredibly well done on Nicole's part, but I think to be fair, I mean, he is the subject of the interview, and he spoke, I think, in a way that it's very hard not to see his candor and his passion for the rule of law in this country. And so I think it's just a smart choice.
Yeah. When we think about what is the rule of law, in really good times, you don't have to think about it at all. You shouldn't have to. It's tested in crises. It's tested in panic. Most people, when they look back at the Nixon era or the McCarthy era, we have a kind of unity about it. I know J.D. Vance wanted to change that in the Nixon example, but there's a kind of unity. Oh, right, the McCarthyism became conviction by accusation. That's bad, and we want to be more than that. And what we have now, a government that, like Putin's government, routinely investigates, and when it can, even with very little evidence, tries to charge multiple members of the opposition party, journalists, others, critics. And so I want to play with that in mind, what he said about the future of the rule of law.
If you took the name of our country off it and you were just examining the state of the rule of law in America, is it dead?
I don't think so at all. And for the reasons I said earlier, There are legions of career prosecutors, people just like me, you just don't know their name, who want to do the right thing. They're in the Justice Department. They want to serve. We have a lot of challenges in front of us, and the rehabilitation of the department is not going to be any mean feat. Recovering character is a lot harder than gaining it in the first place. But I think we're totally capable of doing that. I'm completely optimistic.
Andrew?
Well, even in Watergate and the McCarthy era, it's worth remembering. It's now you look back on it and you think, oh, there became a unity, but there wasn't at the time. Those were very, very scary times. And democracy is not easy. And there are many people now watching this who know that. They know it through what we're living through. They know it through things that they've lived through even before Donald Trump, the civil rights movement. It's true in other countries as well. In other words, this is one where everything's not always handed to you on a silver platter, and you are expected to have the courage of your convictions and to act in a way that's in accordance with your principles. And if there's anything that Donald Trump has taught us in the first term and in this term, is that we see the ways in which the current rule of law can be not just eroded, but in many ways eradicated. And it is a call to action if that is something you care about. And, it's not going to be easy.